I do have a PowerPoint, and Michelle has it. And so if you wouldn't mind converting it to a PDF, and you certainly are welcome to distribute it to the members of the committee.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and sort of go through what I've got, and then I'm happy to take some questions. And I do want to start with just providing some context for our sustainability and our sustainability goals, because Roseville has gone through a massive redevelopment, and so some of these goals fit into that. So I'm going to start with sort of an overview of our campus, and if I can just, I don't do this all the time, so I will see what I can do as far as sharing my screen and getting that PowerPoint going. So that is actually a picture of our community looking west toward the Willamette River. And that's me, and you will have my contact information. Our mission is to support older adults to live the life of their own choosing. Those are some of the folks that live here. We do have our own lifeguard corps as shallow water lifeguards, all certified. So just very briefly, we welcomed our first residents in 1960. So I understand on the East Coast, that's not very old. On the West Coast, it's pretty old. I arrived in 2006, and I discovered that there had been decades of really lack of infrastructure maintenance of any kind. And so, as you can see, we had 3 different phases of development. I have some brief pictures on that. But the very first phase really focused on our commons, because the folks that created Roseville, while very innovative in terms of trying to figure out how to live together and support each other, did not believe in a lot of extra space outside of the places where people lived. I think that's pretty common back in 1960. So figuring out the commons and upgrading infrastructure, and then the final 2 phases really were a way to get to the redevelopment of our clinical care area. So in our first phase, it took 2 years. We started planning this in 2010. None of our building is on green space, so we had to relocate residents on campus for 3 years before we got to start this redevelopment. But we do have a lovely wellness area and all the things. It's very, very beautiful here. And we have 22 acres on a slope above the river. And our phase 2, really we had a plan to do this boom, 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 because no one wants to live under construction for all time. And we wanted everyone here to enjoy the results, the fruits of our labor. So phase 2 was really focused on neighborhoods, whereas phase 1 was we built neighborhoods, but we also built a lot of amenities, including restaurants and a library and the wellness center. Phase 2 was 4 different neighborhoods to increase sort of the resident base from which we could afford to build phase 3, which was focused on clinical services. So on the left on phase 3, you see a little picture of Trillium Townhome, which is our second net zero neighborhood. In the center on the top is Madrona Grove, and that was really the expensive thing. So we have both a nursing home license and an assisted living license. And as some of you may be aware, there are no entrance fees that support the capital costs for those sorts of things. Those are for existing residents. So trying to figure out how to pay back the loan for that, the most expensive construction known to mankind, I think, was the focus of increasing the number of residents so that we could basically afford that mortgage. In addition to Madrona Grove and Trillium Townhome, we were also able to put in a gray water reclamation system. So I will go a little bit more deeply into that and all of our sustainability efforts. So they are folded into the redevelopment. It provided us with an opportunity to do something different and not really slip it in there, but we're already redeveloping, we're creating new neighborhoods. So why not, in all of the kinds of things that we're working on, why not do something truly different? And on our campus, all the neighborhoods really look quite different. So the Oaks was in phase 2. It was a huge change for us because it was our first net zero neighborhood. So they are 4 triplexes. There were originally two Heritage Oaks. One of them, as we gave them their physical examinations, turned out to be ill. And so we planted a new second one, and we did save the original one, which, if anyone's curious, costs about $100,000 to save a mature tree while you are constructing buildings around it. We didn't know that when we went into it, but we just knew that we loved the tree, and it was super important for us to save it. we wanted to create housing that made a difference. And we had a great partner in Greenhammer, a local design build firm that is an expert in all things sustainable in the building trades. So what we felt was that our market in the Northwest is very environmentally aware, and we felt that there was a group of people who would be willing to pay more for a net zero home because those materials are more expensive, the expertise is more expensive, and this was pre-COVID. So it was just normal, more expensive, and we were really nervous because at that point that was the most expensive entrance fee that we had ever offered were for these homes, and we weren't sure that there was going to be a market regardless of our research. We had 4 different neighborhoods. This neighborhood sold out first, and we found out from the people that put their money down that their feeling was they could never have afforded to build an entire net zero home, but this was a way they could live their values, that they could afford this small home. So for us, we felt that we were responding to what people had told us they wanted, and we were able to deliver something I thought that was very beautiful. On the flip side, their monthly fees are significantly lower than anyone else's on campus because, of course, they don't have a lot of electricity costs. So we've had them up and running long enough that we can say that they are actually net positive. They generate more electricity than they use. And the primary ways they do that, we have a solar array. But watching these homes being built is unlike any other construction project I've ever seen. Just all of the materials are different. The way they start is different. The strength of the insulation, the type of insulation, and then all of the openings in the building, which is where you lose a lot. The windows and doors are 5-point locking systems, which currently all of those things come from Poland, another expense, but it's almost like a marine window. And so with that sort of tight seal, then there's also a fresh air recovery system that filters air that comes in. So you're constantly getting fresh air. So it's an extremely healthy environment as well as being sustainable for the big picture. We started this part of the journey because I personally am really interested in ADUs, accessory dwelling units. It's a big thing out in the Northwest. It's becoming a little more mainstream. Those are small homes, generally 800 square feet or less, that are able to be permitted on a site that has an existing main house. And Portland has now changed our building code so you can build up to 3 additional small homes like that without some special permit or variance. In the city of Portland. And so I really like small house living. I personally live in a house that's under 1,200 square feet. And I went to, there's a build small, live large conference here in Portland. And I went to the very first one, and I was just geeking out over all the technology and the people who are doing new things and what you can do if you think through design rather than just more square footage. How do you use the square footage you have? And that's where I ran into Greenhammer, and they had a townhome project called Ankeny Row that they just had built and was very successful. And when I saw it, I said, oh, we could build that at Rose Villa. So I went up to the Greenhammer people at the conference and I said, hey, I'm from a senior living community. I think I would like you to build one of our neighborhoods. And they brushed me off like, oh, whatever. Who knows what's in people's heads when you say senior living? I'm sure they thought that there was like this old rickety rocking chair nursing home place. Like it kills me. It kills me, the things that I unearth from people's psyches about aging and senior living. So I just said, you have to come to Rose Villa. You have to come and walk around with me and let me tell you what I'm thinking. And so I convinced them that they really could build communities here, and then they have become an incredible supporter of senior living and small house living for older adults. So it was hilarious at the beginning, but they've become a very, very strong partner. And they're just what I liked very much about their approach, and which I would, in any build I would ever consult in or be involved with, I would encourage, is that their commitment to education is intense. And so all of our construction projects, we have had both a construction newsletter every week called The Hammer, It is weekly. I heard that comment about newsletters being too frequent, but it's only a couple pages and lots of pictures. And then we also had once a week, we had, until COVID, it was live, but then it became virtual, coffee with the contractors, where residents could ask the contractors directly questions. And so the Greenhammer folks, they just went crazy. At a certain point, I thought, I think we're getting some sort of college level credit here on how to design and build net zero homes, because it was so thorough. It was so engaging, and it was a guy who was probably 35 years old. He was so excited that people cared and would ask questions. It was just a wonderful, wonderful partnership. So I have been really impressed with the partnership and with how these have turned out. So in our third project, we decided to build another neighborhood with these same people. So this is Trillium Townhomes, whereas the Oaks was 12 total. This is 6 zero energy homes, and these are in a different part of our campus. It's right along a busy arterial. I can see it from my office window right here, with a lot of traffic. And we thought, okay, what do we do to make it, whereas the Oaks is very pastoral and it feels like you're in the middle of the country, this is more urban. And so we thought, from the design aesthetic, we wanted it to feel more like a brownstone walk-up in an old eastern city somewhere, even though it's brand new construction. I always have a funny feeling about making fake old things, but it does look really interesting, and it's got its own character as a neighborhood. So we felt confident that we could build another net zero neighborhood. The odd thing about this one is that it's actually a townhome with an upstairs, an interior staircase, which people just said we were nuts about, but we've created it so that you can live on the ground floor, but the upstairs is being used, as we thought it might, by residents who still work, so they have an office, or they have adult children that come all the time. And if they were to have a live-in caregiver later, that's certainly fine with us. So it's set up for that. It feels more like an actual house that people have moved in from at the outside. So we felt, and they look very different from the first one, designed by the same folks. And those people have just moved in the last month, so we don't know their usage yet. We are hoping, we've published some information among each neighborhood, and we'd like to create a video screen that shows real-time energy usage for each household in each neighborhood, because people are a little competitive. And so we feel that we can use that force for good. And already the Oaks are like, well, we generate more than anyone else. I think that it feels really good to people to win at the energy sustainability game. So whatever way we can help them conceptualize that and make that really obvious, we will. Let's see what's on. Oh, so a little bit about that small home concept, because I think it goes hand in hand. Net zero doesn't make any sense if you're building a 3,500 square foot house, in my personal opinion. So the way we got off the mark is that we are building small, so the risk was smaller. And like with everything in senior living, you're only living in your own square footage for certain things, mostly eating and sleeping. And so we have all the shared common and green spaces outdoors, and we built those into these neighborhoods too, particularly outdoors. We're a very outdoor oriented community, and pretty mild weather here all year round, so you can pretty much use it. So you can see with the blue building, that's a different neighborhood, Garden Grove. All of that within that neighborhood, they have their own gathering space. Everyone has front porch, back porch. Every single home here has an opening to the outside that's usable. So no balcony where you can't put a chair. So we have all of the ways to be outside, and we feel that is an underlooked component of sustainability, that actually breathing the air from the outside is really important, and having plants and animals and all those things really add to the richness of the lives that you can lead, and certainly increases your health outcomes. So in any way we can to create something that residents have control over is super important. And to connect with each other. So the small home concept, we do feel we can design it so that front doors connect to each other, all of the outdoor spaces can connect to each other, so that you're not, in the old suburban model of you go in the front door You do your private business and you go out the back door and you have your private fenced yard and no one ever sees anyone else. That is kind of a hideous model from the old times. And we want to turn that on its head and really use the outdoor to connect. So more than just the buildings in the neighborhoods, and we had done this before we ever built anything, was our native plant landscaping and backyard habitat certification. So Audubon, I think across the country, certainly in Oregon, does a backyard habitat certification that shows that your backyard has native plants, it's drought tolerant, it's an attractor for pollinators, all of those things. And I'm working on that for my personal backyard right now. So all of our campus, whenever we put in new landscape, that is our goal, is to have backyard habitat certified landscaping and do native plants whenever possible. We have a group here, the native landscape group, that's part of our green committee, that's super involved in all of that. And it's not for everyone. I will say the native plant thing, we have some residents here who say, that just looks like a bunch of weeds. I don't want that in my yard. So each to his own. You know, everyone has their own yard. So we have our own environmental services department, and they are in charge of, as I'm sure all of you have the same thing, in charge of, you know, recycling and reducing electricity usage. One thing that we did do before our county had a composting program, we created one. And what I really liked about that was that the residents started on their own, and our environmental services department started on their own. Each group of people said, you know, this is really important, we should do this. So they began the work without talking to each other. And then at a certain point, the residents said, hey, we want to do this. And the environmental services people said, hey, we're ready to do this. So they connected, and what ended up happening was the residents figured out how to publicize it. It was called the Red Bucket Brigade. They did a hilarious skit and a video for other residents. Here's what goes in it, here's what doesn't, here's where you put it. And then the picking it up and disposing of it was part of the staff component. And then we actually had a relationship with a farm outside of Portland where we got our pork products. And that compost went to feed those pigs that then went to feed our residents. It was a perfect circle. I will say that then the county of Clackamas created their own compost program and told us that we had to be part of that, that we did not have an option to go to our own farm, and that we had to be part of the waste management. I don't know if it's mafia controlled or not, but it sure feels like it, that we had to sign on the line for the giant company. So that was a little disappointing end to the story, but it was pretty cool that we could get all that stuff started on our own. And then we are also Blue Zone certified, which that happened a long time ago as well. Super great program and very informative for residents. And it reaches into diet as well, which I think people are very, very interested in. The big thing for us in our last phase was ROSI, which is what we call our gray water reclamation system. So that system is in the basement of the independent living home, the Schroeder Lofts part of phase 3. And it collects all of the water from all of the rooftops in phase 3. It holds it, it treats it, and the water, not from the rooftops, sorry, it's gray water. So there is some rooftop water, but it's mostly sinks, showers, and laundry, I believe. And all of those things come into the tank, they get treated, and then they are reused first to flush toilets. So toilets take a ton of water. That was one of the most shocking things I have learned in the last year. So flushing the toilets is huge. And then if there's any left over, we use it to irrigate our landscape. So that is a tremendous water savings for one thing. And just a great way to use what we already have, to reuse what we already have. So the lessons for us on how we've kind of come to a pretty large shared understanding of the value of sustainability in our community is to really plan for the long term, but start small. And so I can't emphasize enough, starting small. That people feel like, oh, it's not really a big deal, it's just a teeny tiny program. But if you can show success and talk about it, then more people get interested. And certainly, I was definitely a leader in terms of the staff part. I was very interested in doing this. I thought it was important to show other communities that it's not that big of a deal. And I'm pleased to say that some of our colleagues in Portland are now copying us. And so they have got some passive ready homes. They have some passive solar homes. All of that, I think, is because they saw that we sold them. It's not like some crazy outlying thing with like 10 hippies that want to live there. It is a real mainstream value. And so I would love to be able to build an entire large building or an entire campus that is net zero. And so for us, using your partner is super important. Green Hammer has been on site. They have talked. We have done little PR videos showcasing each other. So they're talking about senior living. We're talking about them. We've been part of a couple of net zero conferences here so that people can come and see. It's really great to be able to see something that's built rather than look at plans or renderings. A lot of community recognition. The mayor has come. It's a big deal because we were the first senior living to do net zero, certainly in our area. So that was pretty awesome. And it makes everyone feel very proud. We do lots of listening. And so the other thing that I just wanted to mention, and I know that's not the part that you're as interested maybe, but sustainability really means that you're resilient in the way that you aren't if you're totally sucking down power off the grid all the time. And so for us, we had a huge wake-up call in the last 2 years. First time ever that we've had forest fires near the city of Portland. And the fires here 2 years ago were within 2 miles of Rose Villa. And so we were preparing to evacuate our campus. Never in my life would I have thought that. It was probably the worst day of my life on the job. And that plus we had lost power that same winter for 5 days. 5 days. It was 25 degrees and not everything on campus lost power. So we did find that the newer stuff that we built was more resilient power-wise. But through those experiences, we have started a major multi-year resiliency action plan. Excuse me. Of course, my phone's going off. Resiliency action plan to be proactive in the way that we think about sustainability. Is there a way that we can increase the resiliency of this campus so that we have more battery backup for the solar power? We have water treatment as well as water storage because we are above a river. What are the different things that we can do? And it goes all the way from the short-term stuff to, okay, there's a major environmental event that toilets don't work. What is our plan and how can we prepare for that now without getting nutso about it? Because you can over prepare too. You can't spend all of your resources on something that might happen in the future. And also each thing has its own components. So it's been an interesting conversation. That's something that's going to be a great thing for us to work on with residents going forward. And we think with the climate change, that those things are just going to get more frequent and more severe. So just briefly, our lessons learned, and then I'm done. We just felt, so some of the things, looking back, in the moment, you're doing the best you can do, of course, and doing something is better than doing nothing. So that's the very first lesson I would certainly say. But we did have some experiences where we had some residents who were, I will use the word outraged that we didn't do everything immediately because it was that important. And I had a resident actually tell me that I did not care enough about the planet. And I think that managing expectations is very important because all the money that we're using for this comes from the residents. And so we have to be responsible about how we plan for it going forward and how one thing can build on another thing. You want to leverage every bit of resource and effort so that it will grow to something even more in the future. And you cannot just react. You can't do ad hoc projects. It needs to be part of a bigger plan. And you have a huge impact if you can do that. And that going along with that, it's just over communicating. And that's something that I'm sure you all know because residents change, staff changes. It doesn't matter how wonderfully you've explained something and everyone's on the same page. In a year, you have a bunch of new people and they don't know what you're talking about. So creating an FAQ, creating a video, creating a sustainability 101 that you can say as part of the move-in package for somebody. I would do that. That's part of our orientation package for new staff. And then you build from there so that at least there's the basics that people can understand. Certainly it would be ridiculous not to use our residents to figure out what we're going to do. So I have residents who are really good at sorting through government subsidy programs. And so that's one of the things that I've just asked residents to do for us. New technology, and that's one of those things about expectations. I get emails all the time. Oh, there's this great thing look at this email or this article. Let's do this. So it's like, well, that does look like a great thing. Give me some more information. Who else has done it? How do we check it? How do we make sure that it's appropriate for us? How much does it cost, and how much is it going to pay back? So those are things that residents can easily do. And then special interests. So I will tell you a story, and I mean no offense to anyone listening to this, but this is just how things happen sometimes in community. We have we have many residents who use electric vehicles now. And a couple of residents feel outraged that Roseville does not provide the electric juice for free. And our position is, well, there's 10% of our campus has electric cars. So should we pay for the gas for everybody else too? Why? And we don't care about the planet, and we need to provide these things. And I feel that it's not responsible nor respectful of the other residents to use everyone's money that way. And yet, I do agree that trying to figure out a way to get off of gas-powered vehicles is very important. So we have electric charging stations. We have put in electric charging ability, but those residents are paying for that additional electricity on a monthly basis. So that felt like one of those things where we could have gone either way. I could make an argument, but at this point, I want the vast majority of residents to be on board with what we're doing. I want this 300 people to storm the Capitol of Oregon demanding, more action on climate change, because we all have some shared values and we haven't gone off into some special interest areas that can split the community instead of unite the community. And that electric vehicle thing, I predict will change. I think in the next 5 years, we'll have 80%, and then it will look completely different. So it's not, one decision doesn't mean it's the decision for all time. And that does speak to technology, because it's changing all the time. It's hard to know when to invest big, when to wait. Even the electric charging stations, we put one in right away. It's the technology has changed. What we have now is kind of not very good in our public parking lot. So we have to replace it with something that's more modern. And that's only 2 years old. So it is hard to know. You don't want to waste your money. And then as part of the communication, as part of the building the consensus, we have to have those conversations with each other about what is the most important thing to this community. Where can we make the most difference? We're just one community. But I think as a demonstration, as a demonstration of the power of elders in particular, people who have a longer perspective and care about the planet, I think that it can be very powerful if you choose what you want to focus on. And so, for us, certainly because we have all these grounds to take care of, the naturescaping and environmentally responsible landscaping is super important, and the water that we use to take care of it, those are obvious lessons, and choosing how we build where we live. I mean, I think that's a powerful message to other people. So as you do all this stuff, it's not that it pays for itself immediately, but no one can afford to throw money away just to make a point. So it needs to pay back in some way, either over time financially, or as a way to move to the next step that will make sense financially. So it is, it's complex. These aren't slogans. This is how we want to live. I think that's it. Okay.
Okay.
And I can stop sharing.
There you go.
There we go.
We should all be.
So I'm happy to take questions if there are.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We should all be back in gallery view, and I see a lot of people clapping their hands. So, all right. So if anyone would like to raise their hand, digital hand, I see Arlene Dunn from Oberlin has a question. And Arlene, you're muted. So go ahead and unmute yourself.
Well, first I want to commend you for using solar energy in a place that is regarded as always cloudy. That people say all the time. What?
There's plenty of sun here. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
Plenty of.
right. So the question that I have is that I wonder what percentage of the food that is purchased for your dining rooms comes from local producers. Do you know the
That's a
answer
great
to
question.
that?
Yeah, that's a great question. That was something before we started working on the buildings. We had a pretty serious effort to buy local, and then we have our own 2-acre community garden, and our food and beverage department grows every herb that you have here, every tomato during tomato season. So there's a bunch of produce that comes from our own dirt, as local as we can get. What has happened, though, is that the difficulty of organizing and coordinating multiple sources of food from farmers who don't necessarily have the capacity to give us the quantity that we need has scaled that program back. So we are now buying a lot of things back from the same giant food service corporation that everyone buys things from, Cisco. And we are now buying only specialty items from local farmers. And so that is something that we'd like to start again. And that is particularly important because for our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, there are some farmers of color and some farms that we would like to support. And that is something that as we get done with this construction, we can turn our focus to. It is hard to do multiple initiatives at one time. And what we have found is that we kind of focus on one thing at a time. And that worked for a while, and then it didn't. But I appreciate you raising it because it has actually fallen off my radar, and I would like to get back to that.
Thank you. Stu White, you're muted. You're next.
Oh, Vassar, thank you so much. There's so much to love here, what you have done, and to envy. And one of the things that really impressed me, not sort of a non-energy thing, but the quality and variety of architecture in your neighborhoods. I think that is often not something you find in communities for retirement people. The other thing that really impressed me was the emphasis on engaging with the people who are actually doing the work. And the people who are doing the work are committed to your goals. They are leaders. And I think that's in my career, I found again and again, working with people who get it, so to speak, is very important. And I just like to hear a little bit more about that, how you work with them.
Well, as I said, I kind of dragged Greenhammer to the table. But once they found out that we really were aligned in so many ways, then they have been incredible. And I keep looking for other ways to work with them. What is interesting, so one of the things that they helped us with was the discussion of where materials come from. And I don't come from a science background or an environmental background. So some of that conversation was shocking to me. Some of the things that we take for granted that we put in the homes where we live are treated with horrible chemicals. They come from areas of devastation. We're running out of habitat in some of those areas. So it was just for them it was just a matter of course talking about, well, of course, we only use certified materials in this particular home and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we would ask all the questions. They would have my entire senior management team there, and everyone learned stuff that we can't forget now. And so when we do traditional construction, it's different than it would be without having done the net zero stuff. So we asked the questions about the materials. We have a local architect that designed the non-Greenhammer stuff. And we started asking those questions, and he said right away, "Oh, okay, you have those interests. So I will only bring you those kinds of materials." So it feels like we're pushing the needle in all kinds of ways because of the engagement with our partners, and that they treated us like colleagues, not like just customers. You know what I mean? Getting deep, going deep, super important.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I have two more questions. Larry next, and then I have a question in chat after Larry.
Okay, thank you so much, Vassar. This is absolutely spectacular. I was jumping up and down, and you should understand that Stu White was probably wiggling in his chair a lot more than he looks, because he's a green architect and he really understands why what you're doing is so important. And so it's just downright thrilling to hear you talking. And I have two questions. One is, do you have a twin?
Not to my knowledge.
I would so love to have our executive director hear you. Anyway, maybe there's a way we can make that happen. I don't know. Secondly, I was intrigued by your question, by your observation about coffee with the contractors. I thought that was a very interesting idea. Can you say a little bit more about why you thought that was important and how it worked?
Yeah, I'm happy to. We're a community that really believes in communication, and I am a communicator. I over communicate all the time. So during our first phase, I don't think I can emphasize enough how disruptive it was to the campus. It was like we set off a bomb in the middle of the campus. We dug a huge hole. We replaced every single system, telephone, sewer, water, everything. When it rained really hard here, you wouldn't get telephone service in parts of the campus. Everything was just falling apart underground, including we had to serve meals out of a giant Airstream trailer for over a year, and people would bring their own stuff. So that means that you couldn't get from one part of the campus to the other reliably the same way every day. So at the beginning, we said, we got to figure out a way to let people know what's safe. And so that's how it started, was just a simple, this will be closed, this is how you get there. And then people would ask questions. And we have all these, we created a line that was not emergency is the wrong word, but contractor question line, where people wanted to know, how long is this horrible noise going to last? Or, the thump, thump, thump of breaking up concrete. The dump trucks are idling near my house. I have asthma. What can I say? There's a lot of stuff that in a campus like this that we have to ameliorate. So getting all those in one place so that we could take care of them morphed into a live meeting where we would address the questions. Like, I'm sure you have resident forums once a month with your CEO or your ED. Same kind of idea, but more frequently, so that we would bring in all the questions that were related to that, and particularly the questions that only the contractor can answer, because we don't want to be the middleman. We don't want to get blamed. Also, it was like, we have no control over the dump trucks and when they show up. We can ask, but if you're really upset and it's affecting your health, I want you to tell the contractor directly. It will make a much bigger difference. And the contractors told us it did. That until they heard from residents, it was like, yeah, we're doing our best. And then when they have a 75-year-old woman who has asthma saying that the dump truck is making it hard for her to breathe, I will tell you that makes a difference like nothing I could say. So it was huge for us to be able to address issues, communicate across the campus, not be in the middle of translating things between residents and contractors. And the contractors really liked it. We had coffee and donuts, and they got to meet the people they were building for. They are all building on an occupied campus. And so they got a lot of questions from people just walking by, but they actually created relationships. And I will say that almost every phase, we had some contractor had a relative living here that they discovered. So it definitely grew organically from something very straightforward and information. This today we can't go down Main Street, to a much broader coverage of all things contracting. And that the Hammer newsletter was a follow-up that just had a lot of pictures of progress and a forward, next week this is going to be happening kind of thing.
Good question. Okay, we're running out of time, so I want to get one in that was in chat, which was from Judy Hines from Longwood. How do you encourage your residents to live without so much stuff?
We build small houses. Sorry, that's a kind of a snarky response, but it's not really me. It's the other residents. Mm-hmm. It's always the residents. So in my opinion, having all residents together is the smartest, sanest way to make any decision, to basically ostracize special interests. because you know when you're in a big meeting and you have a resident say something that's clearly their own self-interest, the whole room rolls their eyes, and that resident gets the message. It's not about me saying no. It's about their neighbor saying no.
Sounds like
so
peer
I
pressure.
think, yeah, and why not? I mean, the community is the residents' community. So I think I really trust. I learned that really early on here, that I didn't have to jump in. If I could just keep my mouth shut, the residents would take care of it. And that has been the case. And so living with less stuff, there's an example that is set by other people. And we do have space planners as you move in. That's part of your move-in package that we help you, figure out what will go where. Although we have had people move in with all the exact same furniture from their old house. It is a disaster every time. And we do have a resale shop run by residents. And then when you realize all that stuff isn't going to fit, there's a place to put it. And so it all goes to the resale shop, and other residents and staff and outside folks buy.
Oh, wonderful. Good answer. All right. So I think we're running out of time. Mary, I think maybe we can have one more question. Ellen Gay has had her hand up there for a while, and then I think we may have to move on.
My question doesn't pertain so much to sustainability, although it does in a way. I'm wondering, you mentioned diversity, and that there were some farms in your area that were run by people of color. Do you have a diverse population? And if so, how have you attained that?
Yeah, racially diverse, no. We reflect the Portland, Oregon area pretty well, and that's a pretty white city. I just read a disturbing article about why it is white from old racist policies and exclusionary policies from the 1800s. But so we are fairly white, but we are very diverse in terms of spirituality, practices, LGBTQ. We have a very large and vibrant LGBTQ community. I think economically in our area, we are the most diverse community there is. Our entrance fee range is the widest. And that is my next goal, is to figure out how to build something that doesn't cost as much as regular construction costs, because that just pushes up entrance fees. And I think that the more diverse the community, the stronger it is, period. We do not want all the same people living here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been revolutionary and inspiring and long-awaited visit from you, Vassar. And we are going to move into some other updates. You're welcome to stay to hear a couple of our updates, but we know that you're busy, so if you have to pop off, we understand. And again, thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity. I will leave. I have a contractor meeting, but I thank you very much for the opportunity. It was wonderful to meet you all, and good luck with your efforts. I look forward to hearing about it.
Thank you.